Hey, I'm Connor, and welcome back to the Courageous Nerd YouTube channel. For this interview, I'm joined by actor Dylan Kingwell. At only 16 years of age, Dylan has already appeared in many projects, including Duncan and Quigley Quagmire in Netflix's A Series of Unfortunate Events, Steve Murphy and Evan Gallico in The Good Doctor on ABC, and Luca in the CW's hit series 100. If you enjoyed this interview or any of the others, please be sure to like and subscribe. Uh, So welcome and thank you for taking the time to do this.
Yes, of course, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Great. And how have you been finding life in the pandemic?
It's been interesting, there's been lots of adjustments to make and lots of responsibilities that everyone has now that they didn't have before. Um, and so it's just been about trying to stay positive and upbeat despite everything that's going on, whether it's in acting or school or just social life in general.
Right. And obviously, you're an actor, but what inspired you to pursue acting as a career?
Well, when I first got into acting, it was I was really young. I was around 4 years old, and it was sort of one of those things where my parents asked me, but I was four, so I didn't
Yeah.
have sort of the full scope. I definitely wanted to do it, but I didn't realize. And then only in the past 3 or 4 years have I realized that it's what I want to do as my career, and that's just come from I've had the opportunity to meet and work with a lot of really great people who this is their career,
Mm.
um, and I just feel I feel really lucky that I've gotten to meet all these people and they've inspired me, and sort of it's been something that I've known for about as long as I can remember. So it's sort
Right.
of always been obvious to me, whenever someone asked me all throughout the years what I want to do when I'm older, I would just say acting because it's all that I've ever known, and I think that I'd be very excited if I had the opportunity to pursue it my entire life.
Right. Great. And some people might not know you're originally from Canada, and there's obviously a lot of rich acting talent that comes from Canada. Are there any particular Canadian actors or performers that you admire?
Yeah, definitely. Ryan Reynolds is probably
Mm.
the biggest one for me. I think, what's good about him and what inspires me about him, and really all the performers that I follow is not, their performance and their talent is definitely up there, but it's how they are as people, which matters to me the most. And I think that Ryan Reynolds is, everyone knows he's a wonderful person, and I think that that's what the important thing is if you're in this business or any business, you just have to remember to never let yourself go. And the most admirable thing about Ryan is that despite how famous he is and stuff like that, how successful he's been, he's never changed. He hasn't wavered in his kindness, and so that's why I look up to him for sure.
Right. And I guess from a career perspective, would you say there's a job you would define as your first big break?
Yeah, I think so. In the years of sort of like from age 4 to age 9 or so, I mostly did commercials, and those were great for sort of becoming educated on how to act on set and sort of what the different roles were. But I would say my first sort of breakthrough introduction into a longer term role was my role in The Returned, uh, which
Right.
I- which I booked when I was 9, and I filmed, when I was 9 turning 10. And that was my first regular role in a TV show. And I was lucky enough to be able to work on all 10 episodes of that show. And it
Mm.
was a joy. And it's what inspired me to, to really continue along the path of TV and film, because I loved how it was like a family,
Yeah.
by the end of it, we'd all work together so much, and the adults on that show and the cast and crew were so nice and welcoming to me. And so it was a fantastic first experience, and one that inspired me to keep auditioning for the next one that would be like that.
Great. And another role that you played, well, actually, you played the dual role of Duncan and Quigley Quagmire on a series of Unfortunate Events for Netflix. And I read those books years and years ago, and it never occurred to me, if they're ever going to make that part of the story, they'd have one actor play those two parts. So did you know going in that you'd be playing both Duncan and Quigley?
Um, well, initially, actually, a lot of people don't know is that I had auditioned for Klaus at first. Um,
Oh,
and I actually, I made it pretty far in the process of Klaus, and then they decided to go with Louis for Klaus, and then so later on, I
mm,
was auditioned. This was only maybe within weeks of them deciding on Louis for Klaus. They auditioned me, and the original audition was just for Duncan.
yeah,
So I guess no, I didn't. I wasn't aware that I'd be playing two characters, but um, I became aware pretty fast because I did read the books
yeah.
um, when I realized that I was going to be playing Duncan, and I figured after reading that they were twins, I was hopeful because it would have been a fantastic opportunity.
Mm.
And sure enough, my first time on the set was at the end of season one, and my first ever scene was actually a scene in which I played both characters, so that was really awesome.
And some of your co-stars on that show, because again, that's quite a packed cast of people. Neil Patrick Harris, Patrick Warburton, Joan Cusack. How was your experience of working with those kind of people?
I mean, it was excellent. It's always great when you have the opportunity to meet and even work with people that you've admired. And
Mm,
for me, I had seen lots of Neil's work, and I had seen lots of Patrick's work in the
yeah,
past. So it was fantastic for me to have the chance to work with them because they're so professional and they're so good. But even better for me is that they were great people. And again, I always go back to that. That's the most important thing to me is that I look up to people like that, and I stay like that. And so yeah, it was fantastic to work with them. There was no sort of nervousness because they were sort of big names in the business. They were really warm and like I said, great at what they did. So it was a pleasure.
yeah. And actually, another big project of yours, you actually played two characters on this as well, which is The Good Doctor for ABC. And I would say, unlike most other patients on that show, your dynamic with Freddie Highmore's character Sean Murphy is different because you also played his brother in flashbacks. So, how much did the fact that you played Steve Murphy, who you played first, affect how you played Evan Gallagher?
Well, I think the largest part of that, as you said, the dynamic was different, and
Mm,
the thing was is I had to remember that Evan, the character that I was playing,
yeah,
he wasn't aware that he resembled Steve's little brother, or sorry, Sean's little brother.
Steve,
He didn't
yeah.
know that, but obviously Sean recognized him and recognized the face and even the characteristics. So for me, it was important to just essentially act a lot like Steve and capture those sort of mannerisms that I had done with Steve and the way that he spoke and his sort of optimism. And it was more on Freddie, I think, as he would be the one playing the character who had experienced both.
Mm,
Um, but it was important for me to know that so that I could recognize in the scene, it was a very emotional episode for sure. And
right.
so, I think Evan was just a warm person that would have bonded with any doctor the same way, but it was special in that Sean, up till that point, had not really developed any sort of personal relationship with the patient.
Mm. And with both those cases of playing multiple roles, like from an acting perspective, what kind of choices do you make in differentiating how those individual characters relate to other characters in those projects?
Well, it depends on the role, on the context for sure. I think for a series of
Mm,
unfortunate events, reading the books really helped because they obviously, Daniel Handler, the author, does a great job of describing and developing each character, Duncan and Quigley. And
sure.
so it was all about, in that case, it was about reading the books and doing the best that I could to capture, the different personality traits. For example, I had always played Duncan as more of an optimist, whereas Quigley was someone who had been through a lot and so may have
Mm,
been a bit more scarred, a bit rougher around the edges, and that's definitely the main difference that I tried to capture in those characters. But then, as we just spoke about, Evan and Steve were meant to be sort of similar, and
yeah.
Evan was meant to remind Sean of Steve, and so in that respect, it was. I guess you might say that it was a little less challenging, and that I didn't feel as I had to play two characters, two entirely different characters. But then again, it was challenging to make sure that the importance of Sean's emotional connection with Evan was portrayed. So it just for those two situations they required different work to be done, but they were lots of fun to have the chance to do both.
Right. And I guess kind of jumping to some of your more recent work, you're playing Sam on Netflix's The Babysitter's Club. And as I already mentioned, A Series of Unfortunate Events was also for Netflix. So did having that prior relationship affect you being cast in this show, or was it just completely separate?
I'm not sure. I actually I couldn't really answer that. I mean, those are all conversations that happen with the executives of the show,
Sure.
and so I'm not sure. I mean, they were entirely different production companies and producers, but there are Netflix personnel, people that work for Netflix, not the production company, on every
Hmm.
Netflix set. So it very well might have, and it very well might not have. Unfortunately, I can't really give a yes or no to that.
Of course, of course. And actually, both of those shows for Netflix, they're both based on novels. So as an actor, I guess, do you prefer having the source material to work from, or starting from scratch with a character?
I think, yeah, I don't really have a preference. Like I said, I loved having the opportunity to read the books for a series of unfortunate events because that
Mm,
really gave me a lot of insight. Along with listening to the direction of Barry Sonnenfeld and all the directors and writers that we had. So in that scenario, that I was really really glad to have some source material to work on. But then recently. I worked in the 100 with the role of Luca, and
yeah,
that was something where there was no source material, but that was a joy too because it's equally as fun, I think, to work with the directors, to work with the producers, to create the personality that they want, and we helped each other in that process. So I think that they're both very much fun.
right. And you just mentioned the 100, which, as you said, you're currently working on that. But were you a fan of the show beforehand? And could you maybe describe your character for anyone who's unfamiliar with the show?
I had seen the show before. I wouldn't, not that I wasn't a fan, but I wasn't following it too closely.
Sure.
But once I did get the audition for it, I started watching it because I do like to, if there is prior seasons, or like I said, like we talked about, source material, I like to
Mm,
see that. Um, and then as for Luca, I think that, he was meant to be sort of a relief for Maddie. She had been through so much in the past seasons, and it was at the beginning of the season they were the purpose, the goal was to help Maddie sort of move into a normal childhood. No spoilers, but as we saw later on in the season, that didn't exactly work out, unfortunately.
yeah.
Um, but so yeah, so I think Luca was written in to be sort of a source of positivity and just, normality for Maddie. And he's, he was a cool guy, an honest person, and one that would have become very close with Maddie had they had the chance. And then, you know, I think one of the best parts about acting him out for me was that he started out as, this positive, happy person. And then, a few episodes later, something tragic happens to him and to his community and his family. And so it really changes him. And for the remainder of the time that we have with Luca, he's catatonic. He's almost unresponsive to anyone, to anything. And so it was a really challenging but rewarding experience playing. Because, again, it wasn't playing two characters, but it almost felt like it was because of how much someone's personality can change from like a traumatic scenario like that.
Right, right. And well, this is the last question I've got here, and obviously, because we were talking about this before we started the recording, the world's dealing with challenges during the pandemic. So if you could send, I guess, a message or a sentiment to fans of you or fans of your work, what would it be?
I would just tell everyone to remember to just be kind to everyone and to, put life in a perspective and be thankful for what we have because, even it's really easy in times like this to think that, everything's unlucky and down, but, just be thankful for the things that you do have, family, going outside, going for walks, all the simple things. Just remember that those won't be taken away from you, and just try and stay optimistic will probably be the best way that we can all get through this.